Hey guys, we're finally going to be adding a little button right here where we can click on and we can invite other users to our team. So the different teams we made, we can invite other members who we can then chat with. Now before we get started on actually doing this, I wanted to address two things that I talked about in the last video. So the first thing is I was adding this double bang sign and to basically cast this guy because he'd be undefined or an empty string or something. It's not a boolean. So I wanted to cast it to a boolean, but I didn't realize this is ESLint doesn't like it. It's a no extra boolean cast thing. And the linter, if I save this, it should automatically get rid of it. And so I want to talk about that real quick. So here's the rule. Basically, what I didn't realize is they already force the variable to be a boolean, so you don't even have to worry about it. You don't have to cast it yourself. I was thinking you'd add the bang sign for performance enhancement because you're just automatically casting it, but it looks like they already do that for you, so there's really no need to do that. So I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to continue how I was doing it before. We're just keeping it like this and not using the double bang sign to cast it. And then the second thing is some people were talking about in their applications, remember how we brought this GraphQL query from our sidebar into the view team, and then we can now pass this data to our sidebar, our messages, and our header. What some people are doing is in their sidebar, now of course they have other different applications, but in their sidebar they're fetching the data, and in their header they're fetching the data, the messages, and the send message. So all these different components, they all have a GraphQL query in it, and they're all fetching all teams, for example. And that's actually an okay thing to do, and the reason for that is GraphQL or Apollo will cache the request. So it actually will only make one request to the server, and then the rest of these components, when they actually fetch the data, they'll only fetch it once because it's in the cache. Now, the reason why I didn't just do a GraphQL query here, here, and here, all the ones that need the channel, is because I want to actually do a little bit of computation. I call this computation right here, where basically I'm taking my query, my all teams query, and I'm from that getting the team and the channel that are basically the current team, the current channel. So I don't want to have to do that in my header, in my messages, in my send messages, because then what I have to pass here is I'd have to do like a current channel ID, which we're getting from up here. So this channel ID, I'd have to pass that down. So it's not worth to do this computation in every single component. But that may be something you want to do where you do the GraphQL query in each one of these if that's easier for your application. Alright, so now let's get started with building out that little invite button. So this is going to be something that's on the sidebar. So this is going to be in the channel sidebar, so it'll be over here. And this is just going to be a button at the very bottom here. And all it's going to say is invite people. So we're going to say plus invite people, and we can capitalize this, and we're going to wrap this with a link tag, and the href we're going to just do a pound sign, and we're going to say invite people, and then we're going to give this an on click so we know when people click the button. So wrap that, and then here, since this is just a view component, we need to pass a prop in here. So on invite people click, and we'll call that down here. So on invite people click. So let's see that pop up over here. So nothing happens when I click on this now, but what we'll do is hopefully in our sidebar we'll have a little modal that'll pop down now. So here we have on add channel click. We're basically going to copy how we did that modal, and we're going to create a new modal for this guy. So we called this on invite people click, so I'm just going to copy that, and we'll use that over here. And we'll create a function called handle invite people click. So on handle people click, we're going to do the same thing that we did here. So handle invite people click, we're going to say invite people modal, and we'll say open, and we're going to set that to true. And now this little state we need to add to our state up here, and we're going to initially set it to false as well. And then we need to have a handle close as well. So handle close invite people, and I guess we can call this a modal. And we'll say open invite people modal false. So that's how we can control whether the modal pops up or not. And so let's create a invite people modal. Invite people modal. And in that modal, we're going to just pass it down here. So we're going to create another thing we're returning from this. This is going to be an invite people modal. So we need to know the team ID. That way when we actually invite a person, we know what team they want to be added to. So on close, this is going to be handle invite people, handle close invite people, and then whether this is open or not is going to be with that state. And I'm just going to destructure the state now since we have multiple. So this dot state, and it's going to be open and open add channel modal. So now I don't need to have the state here. And we'll just say open invite people modal. So that's our conditional to say whether they're invite or to open this modal. And here this is just going to be a invite people. Okay, so now let's actually create this component. So I'm going to copy this component because it's going to be really similar, and we're just going to paste it in. And we're going to rename this to invite people. So we have an all teams query. We really don't need to update a query after we add a person to the team, so we can get rid of that. So we can get rid of our update function here, and we're not really gonna have to find index. We're gonna be doing a GraphQL query for this at the end, and we are gonna be using Formic for this, so we can keep that, and everything else we can keep for now. So we need to create a new mutation to handle this. So let's actually go to the back end and create this mutation and then come back and finish this form. So in our back end right here, we have basically this member table. So this is a join table between team and user. If we come down, yep. So what we want to do is really just add a new member. And the easiest way to do this is to just call, so when we created new objects, so like for example creating a new channel, we just said modals.channel.create, right? So it would be really easy for us to do something like modals.member.create and then create a new member of our team. But right now we don't have a member model, so we're just going to create that. So we're going to say member.js, and member.js can just copy one of these things, and it's actually going to be totally empty. So it's going to say member here, and it's going to have nothing going on there, and it's just going to return. So this is basically just a stub, and we can even get rid of that. Now if there's any extra data I wanted to store in the join table, I could here. The only thing we're going to change now is, now instead of doing a string here for the through, we're going to say modals.member. So it's going to grab that table we just created here. So modals.member. So then our index over here, we just need to do the same thing that we did with all our other models, is just import it. So now in my index.js, I'm just going to create a new, here we are. I'm just going to say force to create our new basically model that we just made. So the database should reset and we should get, alright, so just rebuilt, no errors, that's good. So now I'm going to create a add team member to our team schema. So here I'm going to say add team member. And so remember, a user is going to be filling this out. So they don't know the user's ID. They're really just going to pass the email of the user they want to add. And then we're going to pass in the team ID as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look up the email, get the ID, and then pair these together. Now I'm going to create something called a void response. So this is going to be a type up here, void response. I don't think I've created this type before. And this is just going to have an OK, which is a Boolean, and then errors, which is an array of error. And the reason why is I don't really need to return anything when I'm creating a new member object. So I'm just going to really return if there's any errors. And this does not have to be. You can get null for errors. Okay, so let's create this add team member now. So this is going to be a mutation. We can copy this because it's going to be kind of the same thing. Add team member. Is that, yep, add team member. So here we want to requires off. But what we also want to do is require the user to be the owner of the team, right? So like if I am a member of the team but I don't own the team, I should not be able to add other members unless that's something we want, a feature we want. But for now we're going to say only team members can add people. So the way we're going to do this is we're not going to create a permission here because we want to do a little performance increase, and I'll show you what I mean. So remember how one of our arguments is email and team ID. So those are our two arguments. Now email I can't really do anything with. What I need to do is really get the user that email is associated with. So I'm going to say user.await modals.find1, and I'm going to say where, and I'm going to say email. Oops. And we're going to make this a raw query. So now that I have the user, but I also want to check the user that's creating this. So user to add, and this is const owner, right? So we're going to say await modals.find1. And actually, I don't think I capitalized this. Find1 where ID is equal to user.id. And again, I'm going to make this a raw query. Okay, so here we're grabbing the owner of the team, right? So the owner of the team should be this user that we have here. And we also need to fetch the user that we want to add. So really I just want to do like a little if statement here. If owner is equal to, and then the owner of the team, right? So really what we do if we have to fetch the owner of the team as well. So we're going to have to do another query. So const team is going to be await, and we're going to say modals.find1 where team ID, and we're going to say raw is true. Alright, so now we have a team, an owner, and a user ID. So now what we can do is we can say if owner dot ID, or actually we don't even need to, sorry, we don't need to fetch an owner because we already have the user ID. We only really need to fetch the team. So team.id is equal to user.id. So right, so user.id is the person who's making this request. And actually, sorry, this should be owner. So we're storing the owner of the team here. And if this is not equal, we know this is not the owner of the team trying to make this request, so we can like throw an error, for example. But it'd be a shame is, now I can get rid of this because we don't need any of this right now. Let's move this into there. Now it'd be a shame, right? We're going to do one query here. We're going to check if this, maybe we're going to return OK is false, and then we throw some error, right? And then down here we're going to do we're going to await modals.member.create. And then for our create function, we're going to pass in our user ID, which is going to be user to add.id. So that's going to be user ID, and then the team ID, which we already have, right, passed up there. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3 requests to our database. Now before we continue, I just want to make sure I did call this user ID for our member. So if I come over here to my model, the foreign key I used was indeed user ID, so perfect. Okay. So it'd be really nice if I could cut down at least cut down on the requests, because this is 3 requests. And so what I can do is I can call this, I can run these 2 requests in parallel. And the way I do that is await makes it synchronous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this team promise. And so this is going to return a promise, and I'm going to say user to add promise. So both of these are promises, and now they're both running at the same time. And now all I have to do is wait for them to finish. So team user to add is equal to promise dot all. And then we're going to do team promise and user to add promise. So what this does is it waits for, and we're going to say await up here. Oops. So we're going to wait for both of these promises to finish, which are both running at the same time. And we're going to get the team promise back and the user right here. So we grab both of them. So now it's a bummer if the user that made this request is not the owner, because we already made this query. But if they are, hey, we already fetched this, so we're a little bit faster. So that there's a little bit of a trade-off there, right? Because we make this query after this if statement, so there's a chance we don't. But for more often than not, you're not going to get people that are like doing fishy stuff and trying to add a member to the team when they're not an owner, because we're going to basically not allow them to do that on the front end too. So I'm going to return an error for this too. So errors, we're going to say path is going to be email. Well, actually, our path is going to be email because that's the only field we're going to have in our form. And then the message is going to be you cannot add members to the team. Okay. So if team.owner is not equal to user ID. Otherwise, we know they are the owner of the team, so they can just add members. Okay. So we'll create a member, and then we're going to return, and we're going to say okay is true, and not return any errors. And then here, if we get any errors, we'll format them and return them. So this looks pretty good. I might be missing something because we wrote a lot of code here, but the best way to find out if it works is to give this thing a test. Oh, there's actually one other thing we need to test. I forgot. User ID, user to add could be null, right, if they give us a bad email. So we're going to say user to add. If it doesn't exist, if we get null back, we're going to return false, and email, we'll say could not find user with this email. Okay. Looks like we don't have any errors in just our log here. So I'm going to hop back over here, go to localhost 8080 or 8081 for me, and build this query or the mutation we just made. Alright, so add team member, we're going to have an email, and we're going to have a team ID. And this is going to have OK back. We want to get any errors we get, path, and message. And then I made variables, so I'm going to have to initialize them up here. That's going to be a string, and team ID is going to be an int. And both of them are required. So copy that. So now I'm going to make a copy of my mutation here. Get rid of this old mutation. So this is going to be add team member mutation. So we're going to add that to GraphQL right here. So now when we mutate, what we want to pass in is values dot email, and we're going to call this email. We're not going to have an optimistic response for this one because we don't need it. We'll call on close and then set submitting. That looks good. Team ID we're passing to the prop still. Here we're going to call this email. It's possible for us to get errors here, so I can say const response, and for now we're just going to console.log the response, and then we can see what kind of errors we get and display them in the form if we get any. Okay, so now let's fix our form up here. So this is not an add to channel modal. This is a invite people modal. Oops, there we go. So change that at the bottom with our export default. And so these are all going to be the same, right? Because we have an open, on, close. These are all generic things no matter what our form is. So here we're going to say add people to your team. And our input here, so the name of this is going to be an email, and this is going to be user's email. Alright, so we have a cancel and a add user. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. No errors in our log, that's good. And cannot read. Oh, okay, so I just dropped my database. So we're gonna have to create a new user and then a new team. So we're just gonna register real quick. So Bob at let's do Bob at bob16.com. And I'm just gonna use that for all my values. Username can only contain, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So let's get rid of that. Submit. Now let's log in. Now we can view our team. And oh, we haven't created a team yet. And we might want to create like some kind of guard for users that just go to view team when they haven't created a team yet. So my first team, submit, create our team, we got our first channel. Now I'd like to invite someone to my team. Let's first get our first error, right? So there's no other users on the website, so if I do Bob at bob15.com, I should get an error saying that user does not exist. So add user. Cannot read property Sequelize of undefined. So I'm going to come over here to my server. Something went wrong with the server. We can see what our logs is. Models.findOne is not a function. So here, this should be team, and that should be user. So I just forgot to specify which model we were looking at. So let that rerun. We'll refresh here. Okay, just refresh. So I think the reason I'm getting this error is because the server's not up. No, server's up. Okay, cannot read channel properties of undefined. So we don't have a channel here because we don't specify it. I wonder if I get rid of the one, if that works. No. Okay, so let's look at our front end. We obviously have a bug in our front end right now. So it's saying our channel ID, let's do console.log team and then console.log channel IDX. So we can see what the ID or what location we're supposed to be grabbing from our team. Okay, so really the problem is our team is undefined right now. So let's console log all teams and team IDX and see why they are undefined. Oh, I know why. I forgot to get rid of the force true. So when I just made a change on my back end, it just dropped the entire database again. Okay, get rid of these. We don't need them anymore. I know what the problem was. So we really need to make just a little thing that says, hey, you haven't created any teams yet. but we'll do that in a different video. So you're Bob16. We're gonna log in, and now we're gonna create a team. My first team again. So create that, invite people. So now we're gonna invite Bob at bob15.com. So we expect an error to happen. We expect to get Bob15 does not exist. OK is false, and our errors are could not find user with this email. Perfect. So let's handle that error right now. So in our modal, we're going to have response. We're going to say response OK, and errors is equal to response and add team member. Add team member. Okay. So if OK, these are the things we want to do. Otherwise, we're going to come over here and we're going to show the errors to the user. So there is a, I believe it's called set errors. There we go. And so we can set submitting is false, and then we set our errors, and we're going to pass an error object. So now the error object needs to be an object that looks like this, and we get an email, and it's going to be like an array of errors. So error 1, error 2. But if we look at what the format of our errors are right now, let's just show you what our errors look like. So grab that. Oh, okay. Cannot read property OK of undefined. Response to add team member. Okay, so let's console log response again. I must be doing something just silly here. Response to add team member. Maybe I spelled that wrong. So data, oh, dot data. So data dot, there we go. Oh, I'm not printing out errors. Let's print those out. So we need to create basically a universal function that formats errors, because we really want to format the errors in this way no matter what form we're using. So right now we have an array where we have message and path. So we want to basically reduce this array into one object. So I'm going to create just a util function. I'm going to create a new file up here that's called format, or we're going to call it normalize errors.js. Now, if I have more of these util functions, what I'll do is I'll create a, we're going to do a reduce on this. I'll create a utils folder, but right now we only have one, so we'll keep it just on the outer layer of our package. So I want to import this, import normalize, we'll lowercase it, errors, and this is goes up one. This is from normalize errors. Okay. And what I really want to do with it is I'm going to call set errors. I'm going to pass normalize errors, passing in this errors object. So what I want to do in here is we're going to take a array of errors, and it's going to be path is equal to something and message is going to be equal to something. And I want to take that and create an object. And here's what I want my object to look like. So in my object, I want to have like email, and then error 1, error 2, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say errors.reduce, and we'll put that there. So our reduce, it's going to take a function that takes an accumulator and then the current value, and what it's going to return what the next value is going to be, and our initial value is going to be a object. So if you don't know how reduced works, what it does is it takes this value here, this is going to be the initial value, puts it into accumulator, and then the current value is going to be our current value in the list. So first we're going to do one thing. So this is an object here. We basically want to take accumulator and we want to say current value dot path, right? Because that's going to be like email, and this is going to be does not exist. And we want to create a list of this, right? And we want to say cv.message. Now, if we only expect one error message per, we could actually just do this, right? But we want to make this unique and work for all of them. So we're going to pass back an array because we could get more than one error possibly. What do we, oh, there we go. So after, how this works is you, at the bottom, we're going to return accumulator, and accumulator is then going to like accumulate all the values. So as we keep going, we just add a value here and we return accumulator. Accumulator on the next call is going to be here, and current value is going to be the next one in the list. Now, because we're doing this, we don't want to overwrite. So really we want to check. So if cv.path is in accumulator, else we do something else. So if it's already in it, we don't want to set it like this, right? Really what we want to do is push. You want to add a value to it. So now we're going to loop through this, convert it to an object like we like it here. We're going to take the path, check if it's in the accumulator. If it's not in it, we're going to create a new array with the message, one of the error messages. Otherwise, we're going to push on a new message. So let's see if that works. So we're not doing anything with the errors actually, so let's up here in my form field, I'm just going to have a little guy. This will be like my little errors. My little errors will print out here, so we're going to say, and we don't have errors up here, so touched, and now errors we're going to show. So touched, and then the field name, which is email, and errors.email. So both of those exist. Then what we're going to do, otherwise we'll show null. So here we want to just show this the string, and we're going to show just the first error for now. Okay, so let's add this thingy, and cool, we see our little error could not find users with this error, or with this email. So now let's create a new user that actually has this email and see if we can create or add that member to the team. Okay, so I'm going to register. So now I'm going to create a Bob16. So, or sorry, Bob15. So Bob15, Bob15. We can copy you, paste you there. So now my view team, I'm going to add Bob15 to my team. And alright, looks like it worked okay. I'm not sure what we're console logging to get a null here. Oh, errors. So yeah, errors was null. We can get rid of that console log. So now we invited him to our team, and what we can do is, I'm going to give this a clear. We can go into PSQL, we can connect to our Slack, and we can select all from members. And there we go. And we can see we have one member, his user ID is 2, and he's attached to the team 1. So because we created Bob, we can actually just select a user and see. We can see Bob16 is user ID 1 and Bob15 is user ID 2. So we did just invite Bob15 to our team. So awesome. So now we are now able to add users to our team, which is really cool. So that is it for this video, guys. We made good progress. Now that we can add people to our team, we can finally start chatting. So very soon we can set up subscriptions and start chatting to other users in the channels. So that's going to be really cool. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, the code will be up on GitHub if you want to check it out.